Chapter 34, Chapter 31, The Wild Company. Chapter 31, The Wild Company. Power. We still need more of your power. God still needs more of your power. Give your soul to God. Pray to God. Praise God. Give your heart and mind to God. You are becoming God's power. Ryu woke up. Looking out the small window of his room, overlooking the forest behind their town, he saw that the sun was just starting to rise. He hadn't had as much sleep as he'd have liked, but the voice in the dark had shot him straight to being fully awake, and he could tell he wouldn't be able to get any more before the others would be waking up as well. It was simply the price he paid for having a demon's voice inside his mind when he slept. Some nights, it only brought him mild discomfort, but others were screaming nightmares. If nothing else, he was used to it by now. Pulling on his clothes, he glanced at his armor and sword before shaking his head. There was no need for that until later. Still, after a lifetime of justified paranoia, he slipped a dagger into his boot before going out. He felt more safe in his town than he had anywhere else in the past 10 years, but old habits were hard to break. Creeping downstairs as quietly as possible so as to not awaken anybody else, he left the building and sat down next to the statue of Loden, scanning the streets. This early, he couldn't see anybody else out there.
"Good morning, Ryu," the spirit of Loden said quietly after a moment. "Trouble sleeping again?" "How'd you guess?" Ryu asked rhetorically. "I'd ask you about that, but since it's Baruberry and all, I'm guessing you would prefer not to tell me."
Their conversations about the past and future, of demons and destiny, were always slightly awkward due to the fact that Loden refused to tell them much more than they already knew, for various reasons. In the past, Ryu had agreed with that sentiment, but the more time he spent embroiled in it, the more it began to irritate him.
"Actually, there's not much to tell."
Loden somehow gave the impression of shrugging, despite being completely immobile.
"When you were a child, Baruberry set up a mental link with you. Most likely on the day of upheaval, it was already in place when you met him. Through the third eye you see when you sleep, he sees all that you do."
"All?" Ryu made a face.
"That's actually really disturbing." "Indeed, but as ridiculous as this might seem, it is also to your benefit,"
Loden explained.
"Monitoring you in such a way requires all of his concentration, and so he must spend his time focused on that rather than anything else. And because he is thus occupied, his actual activity against you and the world is minimal." "Good point."
Ryu slowly nodded, remembering his Anbosol encounter with Baruberry as children, and shuddering. They had fought off their share of demons and demon lords as a group, but as terrifying and powerful as the worst of them had been, he still knew Baruberry would be something else entirely.
"I kind of wondered why he hasn't actually been doing as much as the rest of them. Guess that would explain it. Can't say I'm complaining, even with Kawabara, Shapukai, and Aruhameral down, we'll still probably have our hands full with Necromancer and Habaruko." "Indeed you will,"
Loden agreed, and his voice was no longer calm, now it held a dark, throbbing wrath.
"Those two. The latter most of all. Yes, their machinations will not be easy to foil. But it will be well deserved, and has been for a very long time." "I imagine so."
Ryu hesitated, before deciding to change the subject. As much as he wanted to press the god on that topic, he could tell that doing so wouldn't be the best idea in the world.
"What did you mean by the day of upheaval? What was that?" "The day in which the gate to infinity was opened, and Baruberry and Habaruka led their hand-picked forces out of the darkness into this world,"
Loden said after a moment.
"Into your hometown of Gate, with the intention to slaughter everybody but you. The last day you saw your mother, in her human form."
"Oh." Ryu's mind froze for a moment, as images he had almost forgotten rushed through his head. Memories of darkness and terror, of destruction and chaos, and a dragon's roar as he hid beneath his bed, holding his screaming baby sister tight and praying to a god he now knew to be false. A god who had been the one to plunge his world into darkness in the first place.
"Okay."
Before Loden could apologize, as he knew he would, he changed the subject quickly.
"So, Nina said you were there, in Windia." "Indeed I was," Loden agreed. "In spirit, that is. For obvious reasons, my form is no longer welcome in the lands of the Wing clan. For that day, however, I made an exception, and used up some of what little power I have left to me in this world. It was my due to those who she met within the tomb, though their fate was no choice of mine." "That's what Nina said, all right."
Ryu nodded, recalling the time he had met his predecessor, and the harsh, bitter anger that he could tell had filled every waking thought in the old man's head for centuries on end.
I'm not going to pass any judgment, one way or the other, on that subject. Not my business, not my call.
Staring up at the sky, as more light slowly began to creep over the town, he kept his voice casual as he continued.
So, who was it supposed to be? You already know that,
Loden said quietly.
As soon as Necromancer was recruited by Habaruko, 1,000 years ago, Nina's father's life was in danger, though it would be almost a millennium still before he was even born. Were he to take up the mark of the Great Bird, however. Yes, it was cold. Yes, it was ruthless. But better him than either of his daughters. I never intended for Nina to make that sacrifice. And I certainly never did for Mina. I am sorry, Ryu. I should have done more to ensure what would happen, but then it would have looked like you were setting Nina's father up,
Ryu guessed.
And like you said, the Wing Clan aren't ever going to be your biggest fans.
He took a deep breath, trying to control the way his fists were shaking, and to remember that the spirit of the Dragon God had always done everything he could to help them.
You warned them, didn't you? My ancestors. I did,
Loden agreed somberly.
And yet, they did not listen. It was not their union that made this necessary, that was beyond the power of anything in this world to change, and had they simply asked the world to make an exception for them, to allow them to marry despite the laws against such between clans, all would have been fine. In time, their descendants would have replenished the family's breath through the rest of the clan. But when they did the right thing, and had laws passed allowing all of the Dragon Clan and the Wing Clan to interbreed, only one option was left to me. That's why nobody had any breath of wind left.
Ryu closed his eyes.
And why my breath of fire is so weak. And what's worse is, they blamed you for all of it. Even though if you hadn't, we'd be shit out of luck right now, and Baruberi and Habaruko would have won. It doesn't make it any easier,
Loden said softly.
No,
Ryu agreed, thinking of Mina for a moment before shutting that thought process off, shoving it out of his mind in a way. He had grown good at doing that, over the course of his life.
It doesn't. And it shouldn't. Morning, Battison.
A voice startled him, and he turned to look at Azusa, one of the town's residents. A big, burly hunter in his mid-50s with short blonde hair and beard, he looked to be out for a job with his younger brother McLean, who looked nearly identical save for dark blue dye of his own hair and beard.
Up bright and early, hey? Good for you. Unlike my worthless brother here, who I practically had to throw out of bed. If you're going to lie, try to come up with one that's at least slightly believable, hey?
McLean, a fisherman, snorted.
I was the one throwing rocks at your window. You're just lucky I care about you enough to make sure you stay in shape, or else I'd have just gone running without you. Not that it'd make much of a difference. Is that a fact?
Azusa yelled as they moved on.
Eat my dust, then, bro. What was that? You're so far behind I can't hear you. Come back here, then, and I'll help you with that. Close one,
Ryu muttered once he was sure they were out of earshot.
I have to be honest. I'm kind of surprised we haven't been found out already. As am I.
Loden shook his head.
And before you ask, yes, I can make my voice audible to others outside of your group. As a matter of fact, those of the Dragon Clan will always be able to hear me, whether I want them to or not. However, somehow, I doubt that would go over well with many of the townspeople. The ones most devoted to Saint Eva, you mean?
Ryu sighed.
Yeah, fair enough. It's going to be bad, breaking that one to them, as it is. Don't really need to do anything to make that worse.
He glanced at the statue again.
Speaking of that. Don't,
Loden told him, quietly but firmly.
Don't bother. I'm sorry, Ryu, but I can't. Not on that subject. I have enough leeway to get away with slipping you a few hints on some things, but not on that. All right.
He nodded.
Destiny, hey? Fate, and all that jazz. All right, then, let me fill you in on something you might not have noticed. I figure I owe you a few. Well, that's new.
Loden sounded amused.
None of your ancestors ever said that to me before. All right, I'm listening. Deez is starting to crack,
Ryu told him flatly.
It's not sudden or anything. I doubt it's because of what happened to Mina. If anything, it's probably because she woke up early this time, and had to spend a decade undercover in the magic school, pretending to be a normal girl. I've had my suspicions for a while now. Every so often, something would get to her, and she'd slip up. But I didn't know for sure until we went to Guns, and started talking about her friends from the last time. The ones who've gone on,
Loden said, his voice thoughtful now. All traces of humor had vanished.
And the ones that haven't, even after 1,000 years. Exactly.
Ryu nodded.
The game's changing on her, and she's trying to keep up, but after I don't know how many thousands of years, that's not as easy as it sounds. Don't get me wrong, I'm not worried about this time around. I trust her with my life, just as much as any of the others. But next time, or the time after that. She might be ageless, but she's not immortal, and she's not invincible, old man. She can't keep doing this forever. You really do care about her, don't you?
Lawton murmured, his voice odd, as if he wasn't sure whether to be happy or sad.
She's like family to me, now,
Ryu said simply.
Has been for a long time, really. I don't know what she means to you, but I'm guessing you feel the same way. That's why I'm telling you. No matter how cool she acts, there's a limit to how much she can take. It might be higher than any other mortal in the world, if she is mortal, but it's there. If you, or destiny or fate or whatever, keep making her do this, eventually she's going to break. Don't. These means more to me than even you could know, Ryu,
Lawton said softly.
As does another who is dead and gone now, despite everything that she did. And yes, Dees is mortal, by her own choice. Even those such as her and I, and Miria, and Saint Eva, have choices, though they are not the same as the choices made by you and yours. There is always a choice, in matters of fate and destiny. She made hers, and continues to do so. Perhaps even when she should not.
He went silent for a moment before continuing.
I will do what I can. Thank you for telling me. Figured I should, for some reason.
Ryu stood back up.
Don't know why. Anyways, I'm going to go see if anybody else on that lazy crew of mine's woken up yet.
Hands in his pockets, he started to walk away, then paused.
I'll do what I can, too. Might not be much, from her perspective or yours, but I'll try. It's more than you think,
Lawton told him.
Thank you.
Ryu didn't respond verbally, but he raised his hand in the air as he opened the door and walked back inside. While he had been outside, Nero and a couple of the others had woken up as well, and the old man had started up a pot of coffee. Some of the team were earlier risers than others by choice, but they'd all had enough experience getting an early start on their work that Ryu didn't have to force the issue with any of them. Once Dees came down, yawning, they had breakfast before flying back to southern Carmen, near where the old man in Guns had said the renegades would be found. They kept good pace with the sun, and arrived a little before the relative time they had departed, and a little after sunrise.
All right, we're right here,
Ryu said slowly, looking at a map they'd brought with them and putting his finger on the location.
And the old man said that canyon was here.
Spar pointed as well, first at the map, and then at a rugged cliffside ahead of them that stretched off towards the east and west.
Or rather, there.
Everybody was silent for a moment as they stared at the cliff.
There's nothing there, man,
Bao said eventually.
You sure that's the right spot? Positive,
Spar assured him.
Then they must have some sort of visual illusion up,
Dees guessed, exchanging a glance with Nina.
Think it holds up from above. There's only one way to find out,
the princess said as her wings began to carry her higher and higher into the air. Soon, she was above the cliff, and drifting over to look down. After a few minutes, she came back down to join them.
I found it. We were right after all, it's straight ahead. There's an illusion spell, as we thought, but it's covering up the large boulder that's blocking the entrance to the canyon off. Very sneaky. We'll take care of the rock,
Kat said, glancing at Rand.
Does the canyon widen out? Yes,
Nina confirmed.
Behind the boulder. No problem, then.
Rand walked forward with Kat, and the two of them began feeling at the cliffside with their hands.
Where is it, where is it?
The Warren girl muttered.
Aha! Here we go.
Her hands had sunk into the cliffside, as if it were water. She leaned forward, and her arms vanished as well. Rand joined him, and the two of them began pushing at the unseen boulder, her with the strength granted by the breath of spirit and he with his natural, massive muscles. Slowly, they began moving forward, further into the wall, until they were completely submerged in the illusion.
All right, that should be enough room for all of us to get past. If Rand can get through, I don't think any of the rest of us will have any problems,
Bao joked as they all walked into the cliff. As soon as his face passed through the illusion, Ryu saw the canyon behind it, a wide crevasse leading uphill to a stone wall topped with barbed wire. A metal gate, of the kind that could be raised and lowered, was the only way through, and a guard wearing a mixture of plate and chainmail was watching them approach, eyes narrowed.
Alright, you've got 10 seconds before I raise the alarm,
he growled.
If you've got an explanation, now would be good. Claris sent us,
Ryu said quickly.
Well, not really sent, but she told us to come get in touch with you guys, after we ran into her in Evray a couple days ago and spent some time talking. We're in the same line of work as you. The Dragonkin, right?
The guard relaxed, looking them over one by one.
Yeah, you match the descriptions. She talked about you in the last message she sent, so we figured you would be showing up pretty soon. The boss has been chasing his tail ever since, waiting for you guys.
Stepping back, he began turning a winch to raise the gate.
Yeah, that sounds like Lee.
Sten chuckled.
We should probably go calm him down, then. He's in, right? Yeah, he'll be in the barn on the left.
The guard waved a hand towards one of the hastily constructed buildings beyond the gate.
Smith's not here right now, though. Thank Lawton for small favors,
Bao muttered.
Met her before, have you?
He raised an eyebrow.
That's right, the boss said you guys had run into him, Claris and Smith a couple times.
Turning towards the base, he raised his voice.
Hey, you lugs. They're here. Come on, guys, let's go see the boss. Right.
Ryu nodded, following him as more burly brutes began emerging from doors and windows, or around corners, all grinning and shouting welcomes. Tattooed sailors and punks with dyed hair, bearded lumberjack types and goons in fine clothes with shaved heads, they made the Dragonkin look like polite, law-abiding citizens by comparison. Even the only woman among them was almost as muscular as Rand, with very short hair dyed an electric blue. Most of them were human, but there were a pair of Builder clansmen who looked like father and son, as well as a Highlander clansman.
I can see why Lee said he was surrounded by mugs,
Nina murmured under her breath as Bao, Kat, Sten, Jean, and Dees yelled back just as cheerfully.
Still, they seem friendly enough. If Lee's leading them, they'll be good guys,
Ryu told her.
You only met him the third time we ran into him. He's pretty wild, but he knows what he's doing. They're all like Kat,
Spar said thoughtfully, looking around.
It seems to be an entire company with the general mindset of Kat. Nah, if that was all there was to it, this place wouldn't still be standing after a day, let alone how long these guys have been here.
Rand pointed out, earning a punch on the bicep.
Hey, boss.
The guard shouted as they approached the barn.
Our guests finally showed up. Well, it's about time.
A familiar voice bellowed from the inside, joking tone obvious.
Tell em to get on in here, and get the rest of the lugs too. I've been sitting on this keg ever since Claris came for a reason. More ale?
Jean asked, making a face.
I am sure it is delicious to those accustomed to it, but I must confess.
He left it hanging.
I feel the same way,
Nina told him.
A pity Claris isn't here, she would likely have had some wine on hand. I wouldn't be so sure about that.
Kat teased her gently, falling back with the two of them as the others started going in.
I get the feeling looks are a little deceiving with her. Hey, Lee,
Ryu called back as he entered.
Been a while. It's what, a month since the last time we ended up coincidentally working the same place? We gotta step up our game. Never took you for this much of a wise ass, Battison.
Tiga Lee, leader of the Renegades, replied with a grin as he walked around a huge meeting table to greet them. He was of the Warren clan, the same as Kat, though in his case the feline cast to his features was much more pronounced. His long, shaggy orange and black striped fur covered all of his body rather than just from the waist down, though it was, thankfully, particularly thick around that area, and so he wore even less than her. His only articles of clothing were a blue vest and toeless boots, along with armbands around his forearms and a red kerchief over his neck. His build was muscular, and his eyes sharp and golden.
Guess these guys have been rubbing off on me,
Ryu explained as Tiga shook his hand, careful not to react to the sharp black claws atop his fingers. Like all of his clan's features, they felt much more pronounced than Kat's.
Somehow, though, I think the balance of ass to wise is a little uneven. Know what that's like,
Tiga agreed, moving on to the others.
Hey, Marks. Haven't been slacking off, I see. Legacy. Still packing all those knives. 5 of them at the moment,
Sten replied with a grin and a handshake.
You mean 6, right?
Tiga chuckled.
How you doing, Spar? You need to lighten up more, guy. This is supposed to be a party, isn't it? Dogi. Keeping the rest of these clowns in line, I hope. Doing my best.
Bao made a wry face as Spar rubbed its wrist, looking slightly confused.
Of course, with this pack of clowns, it's probably a losing battle. Still, somebody's gotta do it. Story of my life.
Tiga nodded sympathetically.
Or Claris, I guess. D's. As hot as ever, I see. Jean, right? Still in good spirits. As always, Monsieur Li.
Jean bowed flamboyantly.
A life without joy is no life at all, yes. Something like that, yeah.
Tiga laughed again.
Nina. Still pretty, not that I figured otherwise. And whose?
His voice trailed off as he saw Kat, who had been staring at him without moving as soon as she had seen him. Freezing, his eyes grew just as wide.
This. Then.
Watching them stare at each other in silence, Ryu suddenly felt a strange, cold black anger grip him, but said nothing either.
Guys.
Bao asked after a few long moments.
Do you two know each other? Hey.
Kat said, breaking eye contact and shaking her head.
No. No, we've never met. I'd have remembered, trust me. I know I would have,
Tiga agreed, voice low and emotional.
What's your name, cutie? It's Kat,
she replied, smiling slightly now in a way that caused several of the group to take a step back and relaxed Ryu a little, though only a little.
Kat-chan. And I don't care how good looking you are, if you ever call me cutie again you'll get to choose just where I'm going to shove my battle staff, and you're not gonna like any of the options. My bad,
he admitted, though his eyes were still locked on hers.
Kat, then. Damn, where were you every time I ran into these guys? Hey, boss,
one his men started to say, peeking in, before groaning.
Geez. Not again. Should have known this would happen as soon as I saw how many hot girls you guys had on your team. Figures that it'd be while Claris was out, too, she's normally the one to make sure this doesn't get out of hand. Give me a break, Don,
Tiga said, recovering at last.
We're all friends here. Sure, boss,
another of the men said sarcastically as the others began piling in.
Whatever. Does this happen a lot, then?
Rand asked, looking unamused.
You have no idea.
Jasmine shook her head, her voice was surprisingly deep and masculine, and Ryu noticed that she appeared to need a shave, but chose not to comment on either.
The boss falls in love 4 times a year. Just give him a month or so and he'll be seeing hearts for somebody else. What is this?
Tiga demanded.
National Backtalk Day? Look, you idiots, this is serious.
Don rolled his eyes.
If everybody's here, why don't we get down to business?
Ryu said, a little more sharply than he had intended.
Not trying to tell you what to do or anything, but time is senny and all that. Man's got a point,
Tiga agreed, not looking offended.
Sit down, you lazy blokes, and we can get the introductions out of the way.
His team all started taking seats on the far side of the table, though they left the one directly to Tiga's right empty. Ryu sat down opposite him, and his own group followed suit on that side.
All right, on my left, we've got Mick, Don, Max, Goof, and Pete, aka Big P. Over on my right, it's Little P, Chip, Gaston, and Jasmine. Obviously, Claris isn't here right now, and neither is Miss Smith. Gotcha.
Ryu nodded, trying to get his irrational irritation under control.
Bao, Sten, Rand, and Jean on my right. Kat, Nina, Deez, and Spar on my left. There's Nero, too, but he didn't come, he minds the store for us, so to speak. Agent, right?
Tiga guessed, inclining his head towards the younger of the Builder clansmen, who was sitting next to Clara's chair. Despite his youth, he looked almost as huge as the rest of them.
Yeah, Little P does that for us. He's got a few years left before he's old enough to come into the field with the team most of the time.
He steepled his hands before him, and though he was still smiling, it looked more serious now.
Well then. Now that the pleasantries are out of the way. We got a letter from Claris a couple days back saying you guys ran into her in Evray. Yeah, she helped us out of a jam,
Bao admitted, glancing at Ryu before continuing.
I'll be frank. We screwed up. Didn't do the research, and ended up trapped there without any way out. I'm assuming she told you guys about that in her message. Yeah, filled us in on the whole story.
Tiga nodded.
Doing one last favor for the old firm, hey? That what you guys were working on every time we ran into each other? Not really.
Sten shook his head.
Back in Simo was before we got this job, and Sky Tower was a side job for some quick cash. Over in High Fort, though? Yeah, that was part of it. I've been kind of curious about that, actually,
Chip said, raising an eyebrow. He was an older-looking Highlander clansman who had dyed all of his fur the same blue as Ryu's hair.
Ever since the boss and Claris told us that, and especially after Miss Smith added the part about General Shapukai. It's a long story,
Kat replied quickly, earning a grateful look from Sten.
Besides, it's in the past. We cleaned the place out. Personal, hey.
Tiga raised an eyebrow.
We can respect that. So, if it was after Sima. From the stories we've been hearing about you guys, I'm guessing that'd make it early fall when you picked this one up. You got it,
Ryu admitted.
Everything we've been doing since then has been connected, except for Sky Tower. We can't exactly share all the details, thanks to client confidentiality, but we've been doing a lot of demon hunting over the last few months, and we've found some in some very unexpected places. Same here.
Tiga frowned for the first time since Ryu had met him.
Probably not as many catches as you guys, but we've had our fair share. Enough to agree with you there. We're not exactly bastions of morality here, we're mercs, and that means we do dirty business for Zenny. But even guys like us have some standards, and the shit we've been finding these guys doing. Well, we wouldn't go after them for free, but we're not backing out of this one no matter what happens. Sometimes you really do just have to do the right thing, even if you are getting paid for it, you know. We feel the same way, yes.
Jean agreed.
Some crimes are simply so abominable they offend even the sensibilities of professionals such as ourselves, and in such cases, the only possible response is complete and utter obliteration. I like the sound of complete and utter obliteration,
Dawn said with a chuckle.
We've always kind of been fans of it,
Dees agreed, smiling broadly.
Especially when aimed in certain directions. Let's not get off topic here.
Ryu folded his arms.
Point is, we like killing demons, and we like getting paid a lot more. In order to do that, it's become apparent that bringing down Evray is going to be a necessary step. Seeing as how you guys are working on that yourself, and since we all seem to be getting along pretty well, I think we've got what they call a mutually beneficial situation on our hands. How about you? Seems like you've got the right idea.
Tiga smiled again.
And if it's taking down a whole city, well, double the manpower is probably gonna come in handy. Keep the paychecks separate. We're not gonna try and cut in on whatever it is Miss Smith is offering you,
Ryu promised.
You've got your job, and we've got ours. We're just pointed in the same direction, is all. Only makes sense to form a united front. Then I'd say we've got ourselves a deal.
Tiga pounded the table, and all of his men did as well, cheering.
Little P, get the mugs. A round for everybody, and let's drink too.
Two? He frowned.
What did you call it? A mutually beneficial agreement,
Bao told him.
Well, I ain't got a chance in hell of saying that right, so.
Tiga raised his mug in the air as Little P gave it to him, the first one he had filled.
To whatever it is Bao said. Whatever it is Bao said.
Everybody roared.
You get the feeling you guys have a lot in common.
Sten muttered to Kat, leaning back.
I'm trying not to think about that, actually,
she growled back just as quietly, though she didn't look angry. More than anything, she seemed confused, even awkward, which was actually much more worrisome coming from her than anger would have been.
Is there something wrong?
Spar whispered as the renegades continued to hoop and Little P kept filling the mugs.
I feel like there's something I'm missing. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, I don't like it,
Ran told it.
I'll explain later,
Kat told them both.
I'll drink to that,
Ryu said loudly, before any of the renegades got curious and asked what they were talking about. Whatever it was, he wanted to keep it in group.
Anyways, seeing as how we're providing the backup here, we'll probably just follow your lead until Evray's dust. Any plans we had kind of went down the crapper when we underestimated the setup there anyways. Well, here's the thing.
Tiga said, growing serious again as Little P began giving mugs of ale to the Dragonkin as well.
We do have a plan worked out, but at the moment, there's a snag in it that's kind of holding us up. Would I be correct in assuming that this snag has something to do with Miss Smith, and her absence at the moment?
Nina guessed.
Hey.
Mick blinked.
Hey, how'd you know that? We know Smith, that's how,
Bao said bluntly.
And if there's a problem with anything she's connected with, 2-to-1 odds say she's at least partially responsible. Harsh, but I can't exactly argue with it,
Tiga admitted.
Yeah, you're right. She had a little side project of her own she wanted to see to, so she left us some zenny and told us to buy everything we needed for the next stage of the plan. Problem is, she didn't leave us enough, so we're stuck waiting here until she comes back. And since this is Smith we're talking about, who knows how long that'll be,
Ryu said, rolling his eyes as he took a drink of his ale. It was good, which for some reason made his inexplicable anger even worse, especially when he saw Kat's eyes light up at her first sip.
I'm guessing she told you guys not to come looking for her, too. Keep those guesses up, we're gonna start thinking you really are psychic,
Jasmine joked, making a face.
What she said?
Tiga inclined his head in her direction.
I told her that was a bad idea, but she said she didn't want us bothering her while she was doing it, and you know how it goes. She's the client, she decides. Might just be we can help you guys out already, then,
Ryu said, forcing a smile as he drank some more.
Assuming you at least know where she went, which I'm hoping you do, even if she said not to follow her. Seeing as how she's not paying us a single zenny, there's not much she can do if we go looking for her. Alright, but don't be too rough,
Tiga told him.
I doubt it'll be possible to do it while keeping her in a good mood, but if she's in too bad of one she might just decide we're responsible anyways, even if we didn't do anything.
Damn, Bao muttered.
Deal,
Ryu agreed, ignoring him.
We'll just let her know what's happening. If I know her, that'll be all it takes to get her back here. Bitching and moaning the whole time, yeah, but she'll come. Whatever it is she's doing, it won't be as important to her as taking the demons down. She's got some weird personal stake in that I don't really understand, and I'm probably not ever going to. You noticed that too, hey?
Tiga raised an eyebrow.
Yeah, there's something going on, but she doesn't like talking about it, and pushing a client on something like that tends to cost, so we don't. Alright, she's actually back over in Highland again, but this time, she's down in the desert. Place called Thieves' Tomb. Heard of it? You gotta be kidding me.
Sten slapped his face, wincing.
I should have known. All I'd have had to do was ask myself what the stupidest possible thing she could be doing was. If it's what I'm thinking of, then I'd agree with that,
Dees muttered, draining half her mug in one go.
And if that's the case, I'm gonna need a lot more of this. You can have mine,
Nina offered, handing it over.
I'm sure it's very good, but ale just isn't my thing, I'm afraid. I'm gonna call that a yes, then,
Tiga drawled.
Well, that was a week ago, and no word since. We're hoping that's just because she forgot to arrange for a pickup from us and she's too stubborn to send word for one, and she's just making her way back here. Either that, or she's not done yet. If she's gone and gotten herself killed, the job's a bust, and you cut your losses.
Ryu guessed.
Well, for reasons of our own, we'd kind of prefer you didn't. So why don't my group go on over there and ask around, see if we can find out. I've never heard of the place myself, but it sounds like a couple of my group have, so they can fill the rest of us in. That's a decision you might come to regret,
Sten warned him.
Don't say I didn't warn you. We appreciate it.
Tiga nodded as most of them finished their drinks, Jean giving his to Sten, who gladly accepted and drained it.
Wish we could help you out more, but we know how it goes,
Ryu told him, standing up.
Your hands are tied. Call this paying back the advance favor Claris did by getting us out of there. With luck, we'll be back soon with your client in tow, and then we can all get down to earning those nice, hefty paychecks. I'd say we can all get behind that goal.
Tiga grinned, standing as well and reaching across the table to shake his hand again.
Good luck, then.
He offered his hand to Kat as well, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it too.
And when you get back, we'll all bring Evray crashing down around those demons' ears.
His hand tightened, his eyes locked on hers again.
Together. Yeah.
Kat smiled, but something in her eyes still seemed hesitant.
Together. We should probably get going,
Ran said loudly.
Time's burning, or however that saying goes. Right,
Ryu agreed, as Kat and Tiga turned away from each other, and he forced himself to look away as well. Once they were outside, Nina called the great bird back down, and they flew back the way they'd come, arriving back home just as the sun was beginning to set.
Alright, we need to get this mess over with as quickly as possible. Let's grab some dinner real quick, and then head south so we can pull her out of there. Hold on a second there, buddy.
Bao shook his head.
There's a couple of things we need to talk about, first. Do you mean this Thieves' Tomb we will be heading to?
Spar asked.
I must confess, I would prefer to know more about it before we go in. Same here.
Ryu nodded.
Sten. It's exactly what it sounds like, Chief.
Sten made a face.
A death trap. Some old fortress from the first dragon war down in the desert. Sometime between the first and the second, it got converted into a labyrinth meant as a test for thieves, to see who was the best. Dem stupid idea, if you ask me, but there you go. They used to call it KRYPT, 1,000 years ago,
Dees added.
with AK. You know, so people would know they were serious. Is that ridiculous moat of quicksand still around it? Nah, that collapsed a couple centuries back,
Sten told her.
One good thing, I guess. Even so, it's not gonna be fun in there. Let's hope it's just a matter of asking the staff if they've seen her. If we actually have to go in and look for her, today is gonna suck. This place has a staff?
Bao asked, raising an eyebrow.
You gotta be kidding me. I wish.
Sten made a rude noise.
Like I told you, the whole thing is stupid. Can't be worse than a demon lord,
Rand grunted, glancing towards Kat.
What I want to know is, just what the hell was going on back there, between you and Lee? Ah, yes,
Jean said with unusual diplomacy.
That. I don't know what you're talking about,
Kat muttered, flushing as she glanced away, and Ryu's fist tightened involuntarily.
Any of you? Kat, when he saw you, my petals nearly ignited,
Spar told her firmly.
And if I noticed that, then it's certainly not just a figment of our collective imagination. Big deal.
She snapped.
So this guy's a playboy. Big surprise. Didn't we already know that? Doesn't mean he's getting anywhere.
Sten, Dees and surprisingly Jean all exchanged a calculating glance.
Well, alright, then,
Sten agreed, waggling his eyebrows.
Guess you're just popular with the guys all of a sudden. Wish I was that lucky with the girls. Hey, it could be worse,
Dees drawled, smirking.
At least he's easy on the eyes, right? What a hunk. Maybe I could run interference, hey. 5 more seconds ought to do it,
Bao muttered to Ryu as a low growling began emanating from Kat's throat, her eyes flashing and her knuckles grinding.
Monsieur Lee has a cruyush.
Jean began dancing around.
He has a crush on Kat. That does it.
Kat exploded as the three of them scattered, whooping. They ran for the tree line, and she blasted after Sten.
You're all dead. Yup.
Rand nodded.
Bit obvious, but whatever works. Are we done?
Ryu said flatly.
Come on, buddy.
Bao patted him on the shoulder.
She's got a point, you know. I mean, it's not like he's even her type, right?
He paused, and looked at Ryu for a moment, concern growing in his eyes.
Oh. Uh-oh. Stop,
Nina murmured, covering her eyes with one hand.
Just stop, all of you. You're forgetting one very important thing. Kat is incredibly stubborn, not to mention straightforward. This.
She gestured wildly.
Situation the three of us are in is somewhat unfortunate for many reasons, but for better or for worse, she's committed now. Until it's resolved, she's not about to go looking for alternatives. Yeah, she's not,
Ryu agreed, relaxing slightly. He had a hunch as to just how much saying that had cost her, since he knew for a fact that Kat had always felt bad about secretly hoping that her best friend would find somebody else she'd be happy with. Looking at Nina's face, calm and cool, he felt most of his anger drain away, though a few traces still remained.
Alright, let's get back to business. Since we've never been to this place before, we should probably just take Mina. I was about to suggest that, yes.
Nina nodded slightly.
Let's go pack up some lunches while the clowns get their morning exercise, then,
Bao suggested as several violent noises and howls of pain began echoing over the town.
We can eat once we arrive. Just as long as there isn't any ale, please,
Spar said, slightly plaintively, as the 5 of them walked inside. The other 4 were back soon, Jean and Sten both sporting several bumps and bruises. Kat seemed to be in a better mood, and nobody broached the topic of Tiga's attraction to her again, while Dees was as enigmatic as ever. Nina called Mina down, and they took off across the sky to the south again, over the mountains to Highland. Passing the cliffs, they continued into the southern desert, where they had found the ruins where Dees always slept for millennia months ago.
Have I mentioned how glad I am that we don't have to go tromping through the desert again?
Bao shouted as they soared through the sky over the sand.
Because I'm glad about that. Really, really glad. Think we all are,
Rand agreed.
I swear I still have sand under my shell. I could help you with that, if you wanted,
Dees told him, winking.
Should be coming in sight any minute now,
Sten said loudly as the big man flushed.
It's over in the west, not the east like Wystan. I believe that would be it, over there.
Spar pointed.
You have good eyes,
Nina told it, murmuring something to the great bird, causing her to change course slightly.
Cactus,
Spar explained.
I'm just glad it didn't explode. This time. Does that, happen a lot?
Cat asked uncertainly as a dot on the horizon began to grow.
Exploding, I mean. Cactus are tricky,
Spar told her gravely.
I'd explain further, but I'm not sure how to. Verbal communication is so limited. Perhaps, but that it also what makes expanding the limits of its capabilities through song and poetry so exciting, yes?
Jean asked brightly.
Perhaps one day, we shall have to translate some into the language of the flowers. But...
Spar stammered, nonplussed.
It is not. That is to say.
After another few moments, it gave in.
Perhaps. Always kind of wondered who'd win if that ever happened,
Cat muttered to bow as the great bird started to descend outside of a massive, 4-story square stone building. Its walls leaned slightly inward towards the perfectly flat roof, and a huge stone pillar towered over each corner. There were no windows, and only one door. Despite the constant wear of the sand and wind against it, it looked to be as sturdy as the day it had been built.
Same here,
Bao agreed.
Good to have that answered. Be nice,
Ran told them as the great bird landed and they all climbed off, Spar looking more confused than ever. They took a break to eat their lunch before heading in, one that was only interrupted by a single wandering bronze golem, which they were able to dispatch in short order, unlike their last trip through the desert.
Anybody else get the feeling we've been improving a lot lately?
Sten asked as he sheathed his knives again, stepping away from the pile of bronze rubble.
More than usual, I mean. I know I can bench press more than I used to.
Cat shrugged.
But then that's what happens when you get older, right? So that's not surprising. Actually, it kind of is,
Ryu told her, curious.
Normally, you kind of hit a point where you hit a wall. Well, unless you want to end up looking like Rand or something. How much can you press now? Me,
Rand said absently.
Ah. Is that really a thing that happens?
She made a face.
That's stupid. Must suck not to have.
She cut herself off abruptly.
Well, you're doing fine, all the same. I try,
Ryu muttered, suddenly feeling grumpy again.
Anyways, what are we going to have on our hands in here? Assuming the staff don't have any answers for us.
Sten shook his head as they walked inside, down a long, empty hall.
Several floors of bullshit. I think they remodel it every couple 100 years or so, too, so Dees won't be able to guide us through the way she took last time. I wasn't even there for that, actually,
she told him.
Hadn't woken up yet when the guys went through here. I just heard about it from them afterwards. That end, you know, it was right next door to me, so I knew some things. This is not what I would call an ideal neighbor,
Bao said dryly.
I don't even want to think about what kind of homeowners association would let this place in. What's a homeowners association?
Spar asked, looking baffled.
Never mind. I am more curious about the existence of this staff, as well as these remodels you mention, Monsieur Sten,
Jean said, sounding puzzled.
Perhaps this is naive of me, but I must ask, nonetheless. Who, exactly, are these people? Wish I could tell you.
Sten shrugged.
But it was classified above even my level back at High Fort. Best I can figure is that there's some kind of secret society of thieves that was left over after Bleak got demolished about half a millennium back or so. You know, that one nation of thieves? Never really understood how that worked myself, but they're probably connected somehow. One of these days, we really are going to have to figure out if our town actually used to be that place's capital,
Ryu said as they reached the end of the hall.
Not that it's likely to be relevant to anything, but it'd be nice to know, you know? Hey.
He blinked, surprised, as they emerged into what seemed to be a lobby, of all things. There was a large wooden desk in the middle of the room with a bored-looking old man sitting behind it, reading a book. Metal poles were set in the floor with ropes strung between them to form a long, winding line. To one side, another table held a barrel with a tap in it, along with a great many cups made of what looked to be paper, of all things. Towards the back of the room, a staircase was blocked off by a horizontal metal grate set in the floor.
Oh, more suckers,
the old man muttered, looking over the tops of his spectacles at them. He was thin and pale, with short dark hair and a neat little mustache, dressed all in black.
And here I thought the season was out. I suppose I should have known there would be a few more stragglers towards the end. A group, hey? Well, normally we only let a few through at a time, but you're in luck. There's nobody else in line right now, so you can just go on through. Hold on a second,
Bao said quickly.
We're here on ER.
He paused, as the old man's hand started moving towards a series of buttons set into his desk.
I mean, have you seen a teenage girl go through here recently? Blue hair, wings like a bat, bad attitude. The Thieves' Tomb management has a strict policy against divulging information on clients,
the old man told him sternly.
She was at the end of the line. Complained the whole time, so I kept her cooling her heels for a while even after she was the last one. Sent her down about a day ago. Hasn't come back yet, but maybe she's still down there. Wait.
Spar paused.
You just said. Never mind,
Rand told it.
Let's just go. Hey, what happens if people try forcing the line?
Kat asked curiously as the old man pushed a button, and the metal grate retracted.
I mean, there's a lot of guys in here sometimes, right? If the line is this long, what's stopping them from just saying screw you and rioting? Oh, I just tell 'em I'll press this button instead unless they settle down.
The old man pointed at another one.
Fires 3-inch poisoned metal spikes at every spot in the room except where I'm sitting. That does the trick. I imagine it would, yeah,
Ryu agreed, chuckling weakly.
Come on, guys, let's get going and get out of this gentleman's face, hey. Don't have to tell me twice,
Dee said as they all quickly walked towards the stairs. There wasn't quite a stampede to get down them, nor was there any shoving, but it came fairly close before everybody was at the bottom. 3 corpses, fully intact but still obviously dead, dressed in grey with ugly yellow scarves wrapped around their heads, walked around the first corner of the stone hall and regarded them blankly.
And here we go.
Ryu sighed.
Let's hope this isn't too bad. Allow me, monsieur,
Jean said, stepping forward. Before anybody could stop him, he raised his rapier in the air, and the entire hallway began to glow brighter than it had before. It seemed to be emanating from the air itself, as the torches on the walls looked dim and pale compared to it. Above Jean's head, a rainbow appeared, its bands shifting from one color to the next like flowing water. All 3 of the undead fell over and expired in a single motion.
Whoa.
Bao yelped as the rainbow faded away.
What the hell was that? Holy magic,
Nina murmured, glancing at Jean approvingly.
The most difficult element of all to learn. It does nothing against the living, but cleanses the undead. When did you learn that, Jean? Only recently, from those books of magic you allowed me to borrow and study, yes.
Jean explained as the group continued down the hall.
As Monsieur Sten and Mademoiselle Cat were saying, we have all been improving a great deal over the recent months. It would not do for me to be a burden on the group, no. Good thing that's not happening.
Ryu shot him a smile.
Nice work, Jean. It's one of the only ones I've never been able to use,
Dees told them.
Holy magic, that is. Requires a pure heart, or whatever, to use. And, well, yeah. I've been trying to learn it myself,
Nina admitted, smiling slightly.
I'll admit, it would be nice to be able to do one thing better than you. Why not go for 2 for 1, while you're at it, and see if you can learn water magic too?
The sorceress joked.
Reach for the stars. The last time you told me to do that, we nearly got hit by a meteorite,
Nina reminded her.
So. Hold it.
Ryu yelled suddenly, and everybody froze, as something crept around the corner. At first, he thought he was seeing things. It was a hole in the floor, and it was moving, creeping along the stone towards them like a puddle sliding downhill. Despite the ridiculousness of it, he could see the darkness of another level below, though it wasn't close enough to get a look at what was actually down there yet. The hole seemed to be doing its best to remedy that, by the pace at which it was moving towards them.
Alright, everybody get ready to jump. Well, not everybody,
Spar pointed out, glancing at Nina, who was hovering a foot off the ground, even when indoors.
Indeed,
she murmured, drifting forward ahead of them curiously.
I wonder if I could get a closer look. No, don't.
Dees yelled, but it was too late. As soon as she passed over the hole, it yanked her down into it, as if gravity had suddenly increased beyond her ability to defy it.
Nina!
Ryu yelled.
I'm all right.
She called back up.
But keep going. I think the further you get, the better. What she said?
Kat said quickly, running forward and hurdling the hole.
What the hell happened there, anyways? Why'd she fall like that? The damn thing's magic, that's what.
Bao told her as Sten and Ryu jumped next, the former more nimbly than the latter.
If being a wing clansman was all it took to bypass it, it wouldn't be much of a challenge, now would it? Guess jumping's fine, but pretending it isn't there counts as cheating or something. Alright, here goes.
Making a face, he hurled himself over the hole bodily, landing on his side.
Oof. Or something,
Dees agreed, coiling her lower body up before launching herself over, landing much more neatly than he did. Jean and Spar followed suit, both without much trouble, leaving only Rand.
Come on. Nah, I'll just step over it,
Rand told her as the hole bore down on him.
All this acrobatic stuff isn't really my thing, you know? Besides, even if it pulls me in like that, I'll just get my foot stuck. No big deal.
Nobody else said a word as, upon reaching him, the hole expanded to 4 times its previous size, more than large enough for him to fall into.
Oh, come on.
The big man yelled as he vanished into its depths.
I was going to say something, but he was really kind of asking for that.
Dees shook her head.
Definitely,
Sten agreed.
Besides, Nina should probably have somebody down there with her, you know? Whoa, look out.
The hole had turned around, and was coming for them again.
I can still hear you all.
Rand yelled through the hole as they all turned and ran down the hall.
Chances on another one coming around that corner right about now?
Ryu asked dryly.
100%,
Spar informed him clinically as the second hole appeared and began racing towards them at the same speed as its predecessor.
Knew it. Just continue to run and jump, mon ami s,
Jean advised them.
So long as we stay ahead of our pursuers, it will make no difference, no. What he said,
Kat agreed, hurdling the hole, followed by Sten and Ryu.
Easy for you to say,
Bao grunted, puffing slightly.
I'm not built for this kind of thing. Here goes nothing.
He threw himself over the hole again, and once more cleared it. Only for it to reverse itself, catching him anyways.
Damn it. That is profoundly unfair,
Spar noted, jumping over it as it came for him. As long as they made it by more than a few inches, it seemed to keep going.
What did you expect from thieves?
Dees pointed out, clearing the hole.
Your turn, Jean. Fear not, mademoiselle.
Jean began prancing towards the hole, hopping with his feet spread.
Behold.
Before he could do whatever it was he was planning, the hole suddenly shot ahead at twice its previous speed, snaring him.
Quiyue. Saw that one coming,
Ryu said as they raced onward, 2 holes chasing them now.
Only a matter of time,
Sten agreed.
So, think the next one's going to be coming at us at that speed from the get-go. See previous calculation on respective probability in regards to statements tempting fate,
Spar said dryly as they rounded a pair of corners to see a third hole approaching at an increased speed.
This will likely be as far as those of us not burdened with an abundance of grace will go. Hey, I've got an idea.
Kat said, racing ahead of the pack.
If 2 of us run side by side, it can't go after both of us, right? Ha!
She front flipped over it easily and hit the ground several feet beyond it.
Show off.
Sten called after her, prompting her to stick her tongue out at him.
She's got a point, though. Not sure I want to risk it,
Ryu grunted, jumping it and landing without stopping. This turned out to be a wise move, as the hole tried to catch him with an about face, and he almost fell back in before he managed to regain his footing and run onward.
We'll try it,
Dees said as Sten hurdled it much more easily.
Like Spar said, we're probably going down anyways. Might as well only be one of us.
The 2 of them drew even with each other as the hole approached, and both jumped at once. The hole promptly split into 2, both the same size, and both reversed themselves to catch the 2 of them.
Oh, this is just ridiculous.
Spar snarled in a rare show of temper as it fell.
Bullshit!
Dees yelled, somewhat less eloquently at the same time.
We've been here for 10 minutes and I already hate this place,
Ryu growled.
I think everybody does, boss,
Sten told him.
Pretty sure that's part of the point of the whole thing, when you get right down to it. It's not so bad,
Kat disagreed.
I mean, maybe if the guys who fell were actually in trouble, but so far it's...
She trailed off as 6 holes raced around the next corner in 2 rows of 3.
Okay, you know what? Forget it. You're right. This place can just go to hell. Should we even try?
Sten asked as the 3 of them drew level.
You know what?
Ryu shook his head.
Screw it. 1, 2, 3. Bonsai!
Kat yelled as they all hurled themselves straight into the first 3 holes, feet first. They fell into a much larger, more open room, one that looked to take up the entire level of the fortress. Rather than a floor, it was a series of bridges, crisscrossing each other to form a grid over a chasm. Said bridges were formed of stone blocks about 10 feet square, each bearing a strange, brightly colored face atop it. The 3 of them all landed on the same one. Looking around, they saw the rest of the team in 3 other places, 2 of them on each block. Treasure chests stood at the end of each aisle, and wooden hatches were positioned high on the walls.
Everybody all right? More or less,
Nina called over. She and Rand were close to Jean and Bao, but none of them seemed to be moving at the moment.
Don't move, though. I've got some bad news for you. It seems that was just the warm-up. This is the real challenge. That's ominous,
Ryu said, glancing down. The face they were standing on was a vibrant green, and it bore a slight smile on its features.
All right, we're listening. I'm guessing it has something to do with these things. You got it,
Bao grunted.
To put it simply, something happens every 5th one you walk on. Doesn't matter if you double back, and if people move together onto the same square it only counts as one, but what happens is different depending on whatever the face is.
He indicated his feet, where he and Jean were standing on a cheerfully grinning yellow face.
As far as we can tell, these ones are good. They'll use healing magic, or give you some zenny. These ones don't really do anything,
Dees added, gesturing at the green face she and Spar were occupying.
By themselves, anyways. And these seem to be a mixed bag, so to speak.
Nina glanced down at her and Rand's feet, where a sad-looking blue face stared up.
One gave us a piece of wise fruit, but then this one delivered an electric shock. My guess is that they're randomized. Unpredictable.
She glanced over at the 4th type of face, an angry, scowling red.
Nobody's tried those ones yet, but somehow, I doubt we want to. They'll almost certainly trigger a trap. Ugh.
Kat shook her head in disgust.
All right, I think I can remember all of that, but I'm glad it's not worse. I am afraid it is, mademoiselle,
Jean informed her.
Notice, if you will, the stairs leading upward towards this end of the room, and those leading downwards towards that. Looking at the room as a whole, the faces seem balanced, yes? However, the amount of yellow and green ones increase toward the near end, while towards the far side, the red and blue grow more numerous. It will not be as easy as it seems to reach the end without stepping on one. That's not the worst part, though.
Dees chimed in.
Look at the side. The side.
Ryu peered over the edge of the blocks, and saw the top of one of the yellow faces there.
No. Don't tell me. Afraid so,
Rand said flatly.
Every 10 blocks, instead of anything else happening, we get flying undead released out of those hatches up there. And every 20 blocks, the only thing that happens is that one color turns aside. Looked like about half of the blues, the yellows, the greens, or the reds. At least, I hope the reds turn. Haven't actually seen those or the green yet. If we're standing on the wrong color block when they do that.
He glanced into the abyss significantly.
And somehow, I doubt this fall is one that anybody will survive,
Nina added.
I'm not even going to risk flying, after that hole. Probably smart.
Ryu slowly nodded.
I gotta admit, this is a real mess. My head is really hurting right now.
Kat moaned.
How the hell are we supposed to get through this? It's supposed to be bad enough with just 1 or 2 people.
Sten shook his head.
Making it with 9 of us is possible.
Spar cut him off sharply, and everybody stared at the grass man. It had remained silent ever since they had arrived, studying the blocks.
Yes. It will be difficult, but... Rand, the blocks have not turned since we arrived. Which is the next color, and when will it turn? Either green or red,
Rand told it.
In 10. That's why we told you and Dees not to move. After that yellow, and then blue. I see.
Spar replied, eyes narrowing.
Then the objective is for all of us to reach the opposite side, without ever standing on a moving block, or activating a red face. We must avoid those at all costs. I do not trust them to remain inactive during the enemy attacks or the changeovers, even if all other faces do. If the red faces do not turn, then victory is currently impossible, with our numbers. And if some of them do?
Bao asked.
Possible.
Spar nodded sharply.
The first step will be to reunite us all. Once we are all on the same square.
It paused.
Well, perhaps 2 squares. Then I will likely have seen enough to know. If it turns out we can't do it, I can use the exit spell to transport us back to the front door,
Dees told it.
Only works one way, though, so you and a couple others would have to come back and give it another go without 9 people taking up all the moves. Let's try and do it on this try if we can,
Ryu decided.
Spar, tell everybody what to do. The 3 of you, move 2 blocks straight ahead,
Spar told them, and they did, onto a yellow face.
Now, Dees, walk with me 3 blocks to the right onto this green face. Forgive me, Nina, Rand, we must all get together as quickly and safely as possible. It's all right,
Nina told it.
We know. Ouch.
She hopped on one foot, as Rand grunted in pain.
Something pricked me. Probably poison,
Rand guessed, casting a spell on both of them.
That should purify it. Let us endeavor to avoid it from now on, all the same,
Spar said, as coins fell from above onto everybody on a yellow face. They all managed to catch them, except for Jean, who was clonked on the head.
And hope that red is next. In case it is not, however, Dees, walk with me 3 blocks straight ahead. Rand and Nina, move forward onto the yellow face once we have reached ours. Gotcha.
Rand nodded, he and Nina doing so. A moment later, several of the red faces turned on their sides with the sound of grinding stone, and Ryu winced. The big man had been right in that anybody standing on one would have been hurled into the chasm. When they were done turning, those that had moved were now green.
Thought you said about half,
Ryu told him, frowning.
I wasn't exactly counting, but that didn't look like half. I would say a quarter,
Spar agreed, tapping its chin.
I see. A slow climb towards defeat, but a climb nonetheless. The longer we remain, the more red faces accumulate, until eventually, the path becomes almost impossible. Almost,
Sten repeated.
Does that mean we can do it? So long as we are not unlucky in regards to which red faces remain permanent.
Spar slowly nodded.
And that we are all able to congregate on one square, and make our movements unanimous from that point onward. Yes, it is possible. Problem.
Rand raised a hand.
I'm not exactly sure I can do that. No big deal.
Cat grinned.
Me and Sten will just ride on your shoulders, is all. And Spar on your head, so it can direct us all. Hey, I kind of like this plan.
Sten chuckled.
Do I look like a cart?
Rand demanded.
Or a horse? Don't answer that. Just be glad I didn't say Dees,
Cat shot back.
I don't know.
The sorceress glanced over at him, smirking.
I'd be okay with that. Maybe in your arms, big guy. If we could get back to business.
Ryu said loudly as Rand flushed again.
Spar, what's next? Move 2 space to your right, the 3 of you,
the grass man told him.
Now, Nina and Rand, 1 space forward and then 1 back.
The next hour seemed to last forever, as the 9 of them all moved around the room like pieces on a chessboard, methodically following Spar's instructions. When the undead were released into the room, the spellcasters and Bao destroyed them with light and fire and crossbow bolts. Nobody said a word about the treasure chests, even Sten recognized them as the traps for greedy idiots that they obviously were, and everybody ignored them. Nina and Rand were the first to reach another group, that being Spar and Dees. Once they did, the huge farm clansman knelt down with a silent scowl, and Spar did indeed climb into his back and lock its legs around his neck, equally silent. Dees, however, chose not to follow through on her offer. Picking up Bao and Jean on their way, they soon reunited with Ryu, Cat, and Sten, the latter 2 who proceeded to climb onto Rand's shoulders with matching grins. Rand didn't complain, seeing as it was the only way to fit them all on the square, even with Nina riding on Jean's back as well. The red faces continued to accumulate as Spar directed them towards the stairs leading downward, and Ryu's nervousness started to grow along with them. Even with Dees able to provide an emergency bailout in case they were stuck, he couldn't help but worry, considering the amount of trust he placed in the building. The fact that they were eventually forced to stand on blue faces in order to avoid reds didn't help, though none of those ever did anything more than mildly irritating. In the end, however, Spar's intellect came through, and they arrived safely on the far side of the chasm.
You, my friend, have proven your value to this team today without a doubt,
he told Spar fervently as it climbed down, along with the other three.
Thanks, man. We never would have stood a chance without you. Demonstrate.
Cat slapped Spar on the back, causing it to stumble slightly.
Can you imagine if I had tried it? I'd have been screwed in 10 minutes. Kick ass. I am glad to be of worth,
Spar said, smiling slightly.
I must confess, there are moments when I am unsure of my own equivalence to the others in the field of combat, so the opportunity to contribute in other ways is a welcome one. Jack of all trades, and master of none, yes.
Jean said sympathetically.
I find myself in a similar predicament, mon ami, and there are occasional brief moments when it causes me distress. But then I remind myself of all of my other skills and qualities, and then I am simply glad to be able to share them with all of my other friends. Simply do the same whenever that mood strikes you, and your glass will always be, how do you say? Half full? Yes, that is it. Now, let us see what awaits us next. Wait, there's more.
Bao demanded as they all began walking down the stairs. Nobody seemed inclined to comment on the prince's advice.
I thought that was it. We can hope so, but we can't be sure,
Sten told him.
With this place, it's entirely possible that was just part 1. Yeesh.
He winced as they descended into an alcove on the floor below, allowing them a full view of what awaited those who fell from above. The rest of the entire level was covered in 10-foot steel spikes, which were themselves covered by a multitude of corpses in various states of decay, from the freshly dead to scattered skeletons.
Have I mentioned I'm glad I didn't risk flying?
Nina murmured, shuddering as she stared at a wing clansman who had been dead for about a week.
Because I am. The good news is, Miss Smith doesn't seem to be among them,
Sten pointed out.
At least, I think that's good news. Let's get down there and see what's taking her, then,
Ryu said, leading the way down more stairs into another long stone hall. The walls were lined with alcoves, only one of which was barred off, down near the door at the end.
Somebody's there.
A familiar, female voice called out sweetly as they approached.
Hi. Listen, I'm kind of stuck in here, so when you go back up, do you think you could do me a big favor and ask them to let me out? I'll make it worth your while.
She trailed off once she saw who they were, and remained silent as they stood before her cell. Patty Smith, the self-proclaimed phantom thief, hadn't changed much since they last saw her, too much revealing red leather with too much padding, too much makeup and too sour an expression. When she finally spoke again, her voice matched it.
Okay. No. Just no. Whatever you say.
Ryu turned away, as did the others.
See you. No, wait.
Patty lunged at them.
I didn't mean it. What do you want, hey? Name your price. I would, if I thought there was any chance you were good for it,
Bao muttered. He had never quite gotten over the time she had robbed a local noble in their hometown and left him to take the fall.
Actually, we're here looking for you.
Ryu turned back to her.
This isn't the time or place to go into details, but we're joining forces with the renegades. Seems we have some common interests. Really?
Patty raised an eyebrow, looking up at the ceiling before nodding slightly.
Okay, I'll buy that. Doesn't explain why you came after me, though. Lee's a big boy. He doesn't need me holding his hand. Granted,
Ryu agreed.
Problem is, you didn't leave them enough cash to cover their expenses for the next part of their plan. That's why we're here. They can't move forward until you came back, and you told them not to come looking for you. So you did instead.
Patty rolled her eyes.
Figures. Alright, I was almost done here before I got sloppy. It won't happen again. Head on up and convince the guy behind the desk to let me out, and I'll be right up. They control this whole place from up there. Oh, no you don't.
Ryu shook his head.
How do we know you're not gonna get yourself suckered again? Well, what else are we going to do?
Cat asked, scowling.
Try and solve this thing ourselves. We'd stand a better chance of it than her.
Ryu snapped back, suddenly angry again.
Excuse me.
Patty yelled.
Shut up.
Both of them snarled, and she jumped back for a moment, surprised, before recovering.
I'll do it,
Dees offered as she started to open her mouth again.
Look. I'll use my spell, go back up there, and get the geezer to open this thing. The rest of you, stay down here with her and make sure she doesn't get herself smeared all over the hall.
She raised her staff in the air, and closed her eyes. And nothing happened.
Hey, what the hell? Spatial magic doesn't work in here,
Patty informed her, looking smug.
Duh. What kind of death trap would it be if you had an escape clause? So we're going to have to go back through that room again.
Bao put a hand to his face.
Kill me now. Don't say that in here,
Rand grumbled.
This place just might. Actually, if you win it, you get a shortcut back to the top,
Patty pointed out.
Not that you'll be able to. You know, I was about to thank you for actually being useful for once,
Sten drawled as they turned and walked the rest of the way down the hall.
Never mind, though. We'll see about that.
Opening the door, they looked inside, and saw a treasure chest sitting in the middle of the floor. After staring at it for a moment, they all looked back over their shoulders.
Really, Smith? Really? It's empty, you clod,
she retorted.
There's a switch hidden under a false bottom that opens up a secret door, but I figured that was too easy. Had to be a trap. So I looked around for something else. Let me get this straight.
Ryu said slowly.
You found a secret passageway, but figured that it was a trap, so you wandered into one of these instead.
He gestured at the alcoves.
Is that how it went? Makes sense to me,
Cat grumbled.
It would. Fear not, mon amis.
Jean said happily, cutting them off.
I will happily test this passageway, and should it be trapped after all, I will shield you with my body.
Skipping ahead, he opened the chest, found the switch, and pressed it, causing part of that room's back wall to move aside.
Does he, say things like that often?
Patty asked as the prince continued onward.
You have no idea.
Bao sighed, following him, and after a moment the others did as well. In the hidden room, they found Jean opening up another chest and removing a folded package from it.
Now, let us see just what this treasure is, yes.
He said, opening the package before jumping back with a startled oath in Simon as something expanded abruptly. It turned out to be a ridiculously large hat, bright red and spherical, with pink and orange tassels. Gold letters on the front read,
King and / or Queen of Thieves.
After staring at it for a moment, the prince coughed.
I don't suppose there's any possible chance this is another trick?
Nina asked dryly.
I wish.
Bao shook his head in disgust.
Here, though? In this place? Yeah, this is probably it. You know, if it is real, we could probably just sell it and use the Zenny to finance the renegades. What, and just leave her here?
Cat scowled.
Yeah, she pisses me off sometimes too, but still, that's low. Tempting, all the same.
Ryu pretended to think it over.
But Tika and his boys won't ditch a client that easily.
Taking the hat from Jean, he folded it back up and slipped it into his pocket, then spun around at the sound of more grinding stone. Another secret passage had opened up, revealing a staircase leading upward.
All right, let's get out of here. What I'm wondering is, if all this was in the basements, what's with the huge fortress up top?
Cat muttered absently as they walked up several flights of stairs in single file.
Oh, that's all decoys for chumps who try breaking in from outside,
Sten told her.
Ugh. Congratulations, you have conquered the Thieves' Tomb,
the old man behind the desk told them without looking up as they emerged in the lobby again.
No refunds. We weren't planning on asking for one,
Ryu assured him.
While we've got your ear, though, there's a girl in one of the cells down on the bottom floor. Mind letting her out? Hey.
The old man blinked.
An occupied cell? Knew I should have been paying more attention to those. The poison spiders must have all crawled out. I'll just release some more Urk.
He froze as Sten casually moved behind him.
Now, why don't you be very careful about which button you push?
The Highlander suggested.
We want the one that'll let her go, and we don't want any accidents, now do we? No, sir,
the old man agreed quickly.
Accidents are bad.
He pressed a button, and nothing happened, but Sten remained behind him until Patty followed them up the stairs, looking grumpy.
Good work.
The Highlander nodded.
Cat. On it.
Walking over, she rapped the old man on the back of his head, and he fell forward, bouncing off his desk before hitting the floor.
All right, let's get out of this dump,
Ryu told them. After a moment's pause, he sighed and glanced at Patty.
Look, if you want to come back with us, we can give you a room at our place for the night, and then a ride over to Scotland in the morning.
Ah, isn't that sweet of you, Patty said sarcastically, walking past him.
Don't go doing me any favors. I can find my own way back, and my own lodging. I'll see you all there tomorrow morning. She pick your pocket and swipe the prize off of you.
Bao muttered quietly as she left.
Yep.
Ryu smiled.
Shame we won't be able to see the look on her face. Alright, let's go outside and head back home.
Walking out, they hailed the great bird, and rode her back to their town as the sun set, arriving just as the first stars started to come into view.
Looks like it's about dinner time. We'll go see if she really can make it back there in one day all by herself tomorrow. Ryu.
Nina asked quietly as the others started walking into town, hanging back.
Could I have a moment, please? Sure.
He stayed with her.
Is something wrong? I believe that's my line,
she told him, glancing towards Kat.
For you, and for her. Oh.
He scowled.
That. Yes, that.
She nodded patiently.
It's not really any of my business, I suppose, but I'm concerned all the same. She's my best friend, and you're...
She glanced down at her feet.
You're you. I know,
Ryu agreed, thinking back to Windia, when she had intended to sacrifice herself for their sakes, and written Kat a farewell letter telling her she had won, which had only infuriated her. Idly, he wondered if the two of them had ever talked about that.
I just don't know myself, to be honest. Something's wrong, yeah, but...
He shrugged helplessly.
I don't know. You remember what I said earlier today, right?
Nina reminded him.
I mean, if it turned out that you and I...
She trailed off awkwardly before continuing.
Well, that would be one thing. But as long as she still has an even chance with you? She's not going to go looking anywhere else, any more than I would. She's not that kind of girl. I know she's not,
Ryu admitted, sitting down on a waist-high stone wall around the edge of town, not even bothering to think about if it had been there the last time he had looked.
But something happened, back there, on her end too, and she's pretending it didn't. Does that sound like Kat to you? Not talking about something. I'll admit, that's not exactly customary behavior coming from her,
Nina agreed.
She's even more talkative than Jean on most days. Exactly.
Ryu nodded.
Whatever this is has her tight-lipped all of a sudden. If it was anything else, I'd just shrug and say it was her business if she wanted to talk about it or not, but as it stands. I know I shouldn't be getting angry about this, but knowing that and doing it are kind of two different things. I'm not perfect. So do talk to her,
Nina said firmly.
If it's something personal, then that just means you'll need to ask her about it in private, rather than in front of everybody else. You know Kat as well as I do, so you know what she's like on those rare occasions. She's opened up to you too, hey.
Ryu smiled slightly at that, recalling the few times the Warren girl had told him about her past. Before she had joined their group, no matter how things turned out between them, he had never speak a word to anybody about just how quiet and confused Kat always got whenever she had to deal with matters of the self.
Guess I shouldn't be surprised, seeing as how you're best friends and all. Exactly.
Nina nodded.
Trust me, Ryu. Just go and find some reason for the two of you to be alone together, and ask to talk about it. You're right about something being wrong here, with her and you and Mr. Lee, and if it was anybody else I don't think she'd want to. But if it's just you and her, she will. I know she will. Maybe I will,
Ryu said quietly as he studied her face, turned away from his, picking up on both what she was saying and what she wasn't.
Listen, Nina. Don't.
She bowed her head.
Please. Not now. I can't. I just can't. I'm sorry.
Floating back up, she turned towards the town and began flying in.
I'll see you at dinner. All right,
Ryu replied softly, unsure if she even heard him or not, but didn't follow her in. Instead, he looked up at the night sky, and the stars glittering overhead. Even near the equator, it was growing cold at night now. Living on a razor's edge.